What does MOTS-c Peptide do? In this video, I'm going to show you all the different peptide pathways that MOTS-c can activate, and I'm going to show you just how you can stack it with exercise and nutrition to get the biggest benefits out of it. A lot of people don't realize this, but MOTS-c or any other peptide needs to be coupled with lifestyle interventions at the same time to yield the highest results. So I'm Regan Archibald. I've helped thousands of clients get the right peptide stack for where they are in their health journey, and I've helped them achieve optimal health in the shortest amount of time possible. So let's jump into the video. MOTS-c is one of my favorite peptides because what it is it's 14 amino acids, and this encoded peptide, what it does is goes into the nucleus of the cell and it cleans up the cellular expression. And when you do that, MOTS-c activates this pathway called AMP kinase or AMP protein kinase. And what that pathway does is it leads to sirtuin activation. Now, if you're like, what are sirtuins? Well, sirtuins are these little guards, these proteins that protect your cell and they clean up the damage. It's almost like having paramedics. I used to race dirt bikes and there's, ambulances around, and without those ambulances, when there's a wreck, you couldn't clean up the debris. I mean, you couldn't actually take care of the rider and pull them off without paramedics. And so it's the same thing in our cells. Every cellular pathway in your body and your DNA is protected by these sirtuins. And so if you have adequate expression of AMPK, then what you're going to have is this nice cleaning up of the DNA, because the DNA, as David Sinclair wrote in his book Lifespan, the DNA, you want them to be tight. So DNA silencing is what it's called. And there's things you can do to activate sirtuins, like eating more mint. So kind of that like peppermint and spearmint plants. You can eat oregano, you can eat thyme. All of those kind of garden variety herbs that bring a lot of flavor, like oregano, those are really good sirtuin activators. Chocolate's a really good sirtuin activator. Green tea, great sirtuin activator. And so if you have these little foods and these herbs when you're working on your mitochondria expression, you're going to get a better benefit. And so with MOTS-c, what it does when you activate AMPK, you trigger sirtuin activation, and these sirtuins, they go and clean up the DNA and they create better energy expression. But what else MOTS-c does is it's known as a follistatin activator. So it inhibits myostatin, which is the brake pedal for muscle building, and it activates follistatin. And in fact, in some of the studies, they found that even in postmenopausal women who use MOTS-c, they gained more muscle, they had more strength, and they had less visceral adiposity. So they lost that organ fat that we can get as our hormone levels decline with age. They also found that by activating this follistatin gene, recovery was better tolerated. So MOTS-c is so phenomenal on many levels. Now, how do you activate it even more? And that's one of the things I promised at the beginning is, you can eat the sirtuin activating foods. So remember, you got like your chocolate, you've got your oregano, your thyme, your spearmint, peppermint, basil is another good one. And so you just chew on these. I like to do it in the evenings. We have all these little pots around the house and that my wife has planted. And so I'll pull some of those out and put it in a salad or just eat it directly. And you can activate sirtuins. The other thing you can do is go get in the sauna. Anytime you're in the sauna, you induce a sweat, you get what are called heat shock protein activation. And that heat shock protein is part of the mechanism that triggers the release of MOTS-c. Now, MOTS-c is interesting because it's activated when our bodies exercise. And some of the studies that we found is that when you have adequate levels of MOTS-c, you live longer. If you go to some of the blue zone areas, specifically the Japanese blue zone areas, what they found is the particular blue zone there in Okinawa, they expressed higher levels of MOTS-c than the majority of the population. Now, you can express it when you exercise. There's a study where they found that just by 20 minutes of being on a stationary bike, you're able to see a 400 to 500% increase in MOTS-c, and it lasts 5 to 6 hours just from exercise alone. And so if you stack exercise, you stack the sirtuin activating foods, with MOTS-c, you're going to see an even bigger improvement. Now, what about those of you if you have metabolic disease? Maybe you're diabetic or you get hangry, maybe you're a walking Snickers commercial. I know I've been like that at certain times in my life. Well, I'm going to share with you a study that I think is pretty interesting, because this study, what they found is that MOTS-c helps with metabolic homeostasis and insulin sensitivity. And so you're probably wondering, well, what does that even mean? Well, in this study, it was published in 2019, and the title of the study is MOTS-c Peptide regulates adipose homeostasis to prevent ovariectomy-induced metabolic dysfunction. So when the ovaries get removed, a lot of times there can be some insulin resistance that comes in place of that. And what they found is that MOTS-c, they demonstrated that MOTS-c administration, it improved insulin sensitivity, it promoted metabolic homeostasis, and they also found that it had very therapeutic activity when it comes to metabolic disorders, even when the ovaries have been removed. So for patients who have like what's called PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, what the treatment has been historically is a drug called metformin. Now, metformin is glucophage is the primary name of it, and metformin is the pharmaceutical name. But what glucophage does is it creates more insulin sensitivity. And so it's used in a lot of diabetics to regulate blood sugar. But what we found is in patients who have PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome, just by using metformin, you can alleviate a lot of the symptoms. But it is somewhat toxic to the mitochondria. A lot of clients, what they express is feelings of discomfort in their stomach, and so they don't necessarily like the side effects. And that's where you can use MOTS-c in some cases in place of something like metformin. And so we found that by using tirzepatide with MOTS-c, our patients who have polycystic ovarian syndrome, they actually have much better time during their menstrual cycle. They don't have the painful cramps. They also notice their blood sugar stays more stable. And we've also seen our clients regain fertility by using MOTS-c, and that's what some of the research shows. So if you think of all the organs in your body, the organs with the most mitochondria are actually the eggs. And this is pretty wild because the eggs have a factor of about 1,000 times more mitochondria per cell than even your heart cell or your liver cells. Your heart cells have some of the highest density of mitochondria. Your brain cells have an even higher density. But believe it or not, the eggs and the ovaries have the highest concentration of mitochondria. So you can see when you're using these mitochondrial-derived peptides like MOTS-c or SS31 or humanin or SLOOP332 or 5-amino-1-MQ, you're going to see a dramatic improvement in the person's ability to conceive. And at East West Health, we want you having lots of babies. 8 is not enough, so maybe like 10 to 12. Okay, well, however many babies you want, but fertility is such an important thing, and to clean up the metabolic system in the fertility organs is a central feature of what MOTS-c can do, but it does need to be used in conjunction with the other peptide stacks and the right interventions from a lifestyle perspective. Here's another interesting study on MOTS-c. What they did is they looked at MOTS-c expression in old mice. And they had these old mice, they put them on a treadmill, they did weekly injections of MOTS-c, and they compared how far they could run at the beginning versus the end. In the beginning, they could run about half the distance of these young mice, and then after the injections of MOTS-c, after 7 days, they put them back on a little mouse treadmill, and they jumped on there, and they could run as far as the young mice could. That's just 7 days. And so the thing about MOTS-c is if you dose it at the right time, I have a whole video on that, then you'll find that you get better energy throughout the day. So use it in the morning, especially on the days that you're exercising. If you get the right dosing, most of you are going to be on 5 to 15 milligrams per week. 10 milligrams per week is the typical dose, and you can inject it every other day, or you can do it once a week. That's what makes this a very favorable peptide. If you get it from the right source and you make sure you have your labs ran and you access it through a prescribing provider who's using a compounding pharmacy, the safety profile is very high on MOTS-c. And so if you want to learn more about MOTS-c, I've got a whole video where I talk about every single pathway that's related, and I think you're going to love it. I'm Regan Archibald, founder of East West Health. Can't wait to see you on the next video.